our city learned a lot during the Senior Games. And I think actually over the last several years, when it comes to the value of tourism and infrastructure and sports, when you put these three things together, we actually get a really strong combination for economic development. And so we saw a huge return on investment from the Senior Games, an estimated $30 million. But we also understood better where the gaps are to have future tournaments and future similar programs. And we know that we're short a few softball fields to actually have real softball tournaments that are regional. We know we're still short one baseball field out on the west side. We also know that we can't even host our state's soccer championships here in the city of Albuquerque, all because of lack of facilities. We also know that there's new hotels going up in Edo, in the Innovation District, and there's not a very good way for folks to walk from those hotels to the convention center. Yet most of the people who stay in them are going to events at the convention center. So we are once again reminded that we have a shortage of hotel space that can be utilized by foot to connect to the convention center. Now, the timing is great to address this because we have the opportunity to renew our lodger's tax bonds. And these are bonds that we regularly use. This is a renewal. It is not a new tax. It's a renewal of a bonding program that we've already had. And the interest rates are actually really low. So we want to do this as soon as we can to lock in a really good rate, which means we also have more money to invest in tourism, sports, and infrastructure. So with that background, what we're announcing today is we have sent down to council a list of projects to be included in that lodger's tax bond package. And in there we have $2.5 million to replace the indoor track. This is of course the track that's used for the NCAA National Indoor Championships. And the track is quickly aging and will not last much longer. So to retain that program, which has been widely recognized as very successful, we need to invest in a new track. We also are looking at $3 million for a multi-use soccer facility that, number one, can host the New Mexico Athletic Association Championships. This is men's and women's soccer, or boys and girls soccer, for the state championships, to bring them back here to Duke City where they were for a long, long time since they've been out at Santa Ana. And this also can play a role because we can work in scheduling tournaments, events like that, around the United's practicing. The United has wanted a practice facility that basically is just a professional grade field with some stands, but again, this is just a practice facility, but also some permanent locker rooms. Those are the same requirements for our high school championships. So we believe this is a very cost-effective way to help both of those efforts in our city. The biggest project in this is a wholesale revamping of Los Altos. This park is a 50-year-old park. It's one I grew up playing in, both as a kid and as an adult playing in softball. This is our city's premier softball complex, and it is sorely in need of a massive upgrade. We already did do the pool, which has been a huge success out at Los Altos. There are lines to get into that swimming pool. But to get tournaments, softball tournaments, we need at least one more field. We also need to fix a whole lot of other infrastructure and irrigation issues around the field. And there's room to also build a new Olympic BMX track to accompany the covered track that we have by the Isotopes. And so we're going to be adding in a lot of smaller initiatives, but we believe up to 14 tournaments a year can be housed in Albuquerque alone if we invest $10.5 million in Los Altos Park. Now, we're also looking at $2 million to build a pedestrian walkway to connect Edo, Innovate ABQ, and Innovation District to the convention center. And if you think about our city, that means we have to cross the railroad track somehow. So this trail would actually do that without having to go under the underpass through Central. So it's a way to connect kind of this side of downtown with Edo, especially for tourists and visitors, and also for recreation. Now, we also need some upgrades in our convention center. The convention center is also very dated. It did go through a wonderful facelift a couple of years ago. There were projects that were left undone. So there are some basic things about the atrium glass up top, some very non-glamorous infrastructure fixes that we've got to do, but also we want to look at where are we going with the convention center in the long term. And so there's some funding there to look at that as well. Now, I want to just touch on these other ones. I'm going to hand it to Lawrence to really do the mop-up work on this, but I do want to hit each project. We also need some upgrades at Isotopes Park. That park, believe it or not, is starting to age. And one is a requirement around some issues with the concession stands. Another one is around the netting. We know we had some injuries there, and now it's actually a league requirement to extend netting along the base paths. So we need to fund that to protect our children and families during the games. And we're also looking at a movable pitcher's mound, which is key to utilizing that more. One of the biggest expenses to use Isotopes Park for, whether it's soccer or events, is the cost to deal with a pro-grade pitcher's mound. And so we can actually make sort of a movable mound to get around that. We also have $2.5 million to get some landing spaces for Balloon Fiesta. So as Balloon Fiesta comes our way, we know we need more landing space and more access space all around the park, and there's a wonderful property up for sale that we would like to purchase because our landing space in Albuquerque is shrinking. And lastly, $3.5 million to upgrade the West Side baseball complex. I mentioned this was always designed to have several more fields so that we could have bigger tournaments. And so this money will be able to sort of finish that job, also add much needed netting out there. Because right now, there's an awesome concession stand. You really got to watch out for fly balls. And so we're going to work on that. So this is going to enable the city to build on the success that we've seen in the area of sports tourism, also our convention center, and we look forward to working with council to move this in the fall for our city's benefit. And so to touch on some of the areas I forgot and speak to this, we also have our COO, Lawrence Rael. Also, I saw our Parks and Director made it. Dave Simon, come on up. He's the guy in charge of Los Altos. So if you got questions on that one, he's ready to answer them. Lawrence.
Thanks, Mayor. As the Mayor mentioned, this is a $28 million proposal. It is funded from revenue bonds that will be refinanced, if you will. As the Mayor described earlier, this is a program that the city does on a continual basis. As we retire debt, we are able to restructure the debt and generate additional revenue for infrastructure programs that are directly related to tourism and use of larger tax dollars as per the state legislation. Importantly, all these projects are, as we talked about before, are an opportunity for Albuquerque really to position itself in the sports tourism world, if you will, in this part of the country, the southwest part of the U.S. A lot of the projects, for example, the soccer facility will include not only the locker rooms and a championship field, if you will, but it'll include the stands so that obviously families, etc., can come watch high school athletics there, but also can go and watch the United in practice. It'll also include a small concession area, so that it becomes a venue for us to host these events, whether it's the New Mexico Activities Association or its professional grade soccer practice facility. The project across, as the Mayor described, is the walkway that connects Edo to downtown. What's really important is that a new hotel is now being constructed on the corner of Broadway and Central. So that hotel now becomes part of the downtown hotel, if you will, inventory that we can now use to attract even bigger conferences to the city of Albuquerque at our convention center, which is why we need to upgrade all the data infrastructure in that facility as well. So this is really a comprehensive package that really positions Albuquerque in a much stronger way than we have in the past. And it's all a result, quite frankly, of our ability to have BMX riders use one of our BMX tracks. So this is all about sports activity in Albuquerque. And with that, I'm going to have Mr. Simon, who is our Director of Parks and Recreation, talk a little bit about some of the interesting work that we're going to be doing at Los Altos Park.
Good morning. Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Lawrence. You know, the Mayor has a vision for our city, which is really investing in the strengths of our community, the unique features of our city and our state, and to catch the rising tide, you know, of the new economy. So investments in recreation sports and our outdoor lifestyles in New Mexico are really smart things to do. They're already paying great dividends for our city and state, and this package of investments that the Mayor has outlined, I think, is going to increasingly solidify Albuquerque's role as a leading player in several sports, recreation, and tourism-related sectors. So these are just terrific investments in New Mexico. Los Altos Park, many of you may know, is located on the east side of our city, the I-40 Eubank area, excuse me, I-40 and Eubank. Los Altos is the busiest park in the city. It hosts incredible diversity of activities and literally is the center for a lot of sports and recreation activities in the city. At the same time it's serving those roles, we know that smart investments in Los Altos will produce great, even more dividends. In particular, we have really made great progress in growing some economic and tourism activities surrounding softball and baseball tournaments in our city. This year alone, we have booked 14 different softball tournaments, all of which use Los Altos. This is a record for Albuquerque. Almost 50% of the softball teams that come to play in these tournaments are from out of town or out of state. So when we host these softball and baseball tournaments at Los Altos or at the West Side Sports Complex, we are importing money and economic activity directly to our tourism economy here. A renovation of Los Altos Park will do wonders to increase those economic and tourism benefits. In particular, two key features of the proposed renovation of Los Altos are, number one, renovation of the softball fields and the addition of a fifth field to Los Altos. That, of course, would mean a 20% increase in capacity to host tournaments, but having 5 fields as opposed to 4 is a game changer when you're talking about hosting tournaments, particularly to attract large out-of-town and out-of-state teams. The second key feature of a renovation of Los Altos will be a new BMX track feature, which is again catching a sport and activity in our country that is really growing. So we have a terrific BMX facility close to Isotopes Park. Installing a BMX pump track in Los Altos will be the bookend to the BMX facility we already have, and again provide a venue for regional and national events and competitions based on this great sport of BMX, which is going to be an Olympic sport. So, of course, attendant with all that, we need to do the proper things to take care of visitors to the park, parking, concession services, safety features of the park. But this park at Los Altos is really one of the heart and souls of our city, on the east side of the city, and a renovation of Los Altos is going to pay dividends for decades to come in our sports, recreation, and tourism sectors. So, thank you very much, Mr. Mayor, for that vision. And I'll turn it back over to you.
Okay, any questions on this? Yeah.
Where will the soccer complex go once that begins?
So I think we'll have a healthy discussion on that. We know there's several locations we can put it. One that at least has some crossing benefits is out at the west side, because primarily we're looking at this for high school tournaments. And so if we put it at the same place as the baseball fields and at the same place as the football stadium, the APS football stadium, we can utilize the existing concession, the existing parking. But there's certainly other areas, whether it's UNM or even Mesa del Sol, that we can look at. But that area really has a lot of crossover benefit. And I believe, too, what we like to do because of the financial realities of interest rates, we really want to get this passed and the funding for it, and then we can take our time and pick the best spot.
How long until construction gets started once everything gets approved?
So if everything gets approved, the bonds will be issued roughly in November, at least before the end of the year. And that has to do with even the cycle time of the Federal Reserve's announcements on interest rates. So that's the goal we're trying to hit. And then we get the money, really, we'd have to build it into the various budget and so forth in the spring. But we would expect, I think, to start spending money in 2020.
Can you explain what's going on with the lodger's tax now and why this isn't going to increase people's taxes?
So basically, for many times throughout our city's history, including most recently to finance the renovations, the last round of renovations at the convention center, we just bond against the revenue of the lodger's tax. And so there's no additional, like the lodger's tax already exists. And so we're just bonding against those revenues so that we can get more money up front. and then we pay it off with the lodger's tax going forward. The good news is, because of a lot of the sports infrastructure tourism, and even we expect more from the senior games when that rolls in, lodger's tax has been steadily increasing. It's a great thing for our city because it means economic development for tourism, and this is really just the city's slice of it, and we're saying here's what we're going to do with that slice. Oh, and which is important to remember, the actual lodger's tax is paid for by out-of-state folks who stay in our hotels. That's where it actually comes from.
Is there any like big fish that you're trying to go after? You mentioned NCAA tournaments and stuff, but is there anybody else you want to bring to town?
Yeah, so we'll let Dave Simon start with that. Sure, a few others.
You know, that's a great question because the success of the senior games this year really has demonstrated just what a remarkable location Albuquerque is for major venues and major events. And we're already succeeding with some of that. For example, in 2020, next year, Albuquerque is going to host the NCAA Indoor Track Championships. This is phenomenal for us to be the host city for an NCAA finals like this. And the investments in our indoor track program are what has made that possible as we built that program. And again, having another reinvestment in a new track is going to solidify our leadership in this major sport area for years to come. So we are proving the ability to land major sporting events for our city. Not only will the economic benefits accrue from the visitors, the athletes and their families who come to New Mexico and Albuquerque for these events, but the visibility for our city that comes from hosting these major sporting events is in the millions of dollars worth of visibility. And this is really what we need to do. We know Albuquerque, we love Albuquerque, we know what makes it great. All we need to do is kind of clue more people into the phenomenal resources we have here. So landing the NCAA championships is just one example of how we have already succeeded, and we're going to replicate that success in other sports.
Okay, nice, thanks. So I think what we can do, if you have a few more questions, let us know, but just to emphasize this, so the sports tourism angle is really interesting because what we're really trading on is also our amazing climate, the fact we have a great airport, you know, and we have all these facilities that we can have outside. So when we say we're building on our natural advantages, that's the thing, like everyone wants to come here in the winter for their tournaments, and you know, who's in like hotter climates. And then even vice versa in the summer, we get a lot of folks who are here for the sunshine and everything else, but they stay longer. They stay an extra day for Old Town. They want to come before and after Balloon Fiesta. You see all these bookings also helping other events that are happening. All right, so thank you so much, and we'll see you Monday.